Hi there, I'm Rod Bergeron, and today we're going to work a little bit differently than we normally do. This is how I would probably work most of the time in my own work. And it's just sort of quick and loose and free. I drew sort of a scattered kind of a line across the top there with this is a number 4 round watercolor brush, and I use quite a bit of blue. And I'm going to take a large 3/4 inch flat, and I'm just going to touch this brush onto that wet line across there. And I'm going to wet it again, and I'm going to touch it on here more. And I'm just going to let that color flood out of that area of high concentration. So what starts to happen is it gets to be less and less concentrated as it moves out of the main area. All right, so I'm going to take this round brush and I'm going to rinse it off, and I'm going to pick up a whole bunch of this yellow ochre, and I'm going to touch this yellow ochre just sort of along that edge there and pick up quite a bit more of it here. And I'm just going to let that sort of bleed out of that area into this other one, just like that. That's not too bad. I kind of like that. And I'm going to pick up some sienna here, and I'm just going to maybe touch some of the sienna in a few places. And you say I don't really have a plan. I don't really have a mission. This is sort of just, let's see what happens when we put some color on here and let this stuff all mix together. And I'm going to pick up some of this green, and this is just a forest green. And I'm going to put some of that across the front here. You can see how that's all started to bleed up into there. That's perfectly fine. This is, I want you to think of your painting as an experiment. You know, don't think of it as, it doesn't always have to be a super good finished piece. Sometimes it's just having some fun with the paint and seeing what happens. All right, so got a couple of things going on across here. That's all pretty interesting. And I'm going to pick up a little bit more of this yellow ochre right here and put some of that across there. I kind of have a plan for this yellow ochre right here. And the plan is I'm going to take this number 1 watercolor brush that I've sharpened a point on it with my utility knife. Now, you don't have to use a utility knife to do that. You could do this with a barbecue skewer. You could do it with lots of different things. I'm also going to pull some lines out of this very intense green that's there, and maybe a few more across here. Just like that. And that's it. So if you don't like see where that yellow ochre is all sort of blade up into there, I'm just going to tip this board in this direction, like this. And then I'm going to get that bleeding here, and then I'm going to tip it up in this direction. So now all that paint is running down this way. And then I'm just going to find something to stick underneath there. I got my phone case here. I'm just going to stick that underneath here. Get that all run back down here. And that's it. Let's just leave it and see what happens. I think we got some pretty cool color mixing stuff going on across there, but you never really know until it dries. If you wanted to, you could take, this is my little bag of salt that I have here. And I think I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of salt right here, a little bit of salt here, and maybe just a few grains of salt there. Sprinkle a little bit across the top up here. Just a few grains in a few places. All right, let's let this dry and see what happens. All right, let's take a look at this. So the sky in the background here turned out, I really like it, how I laid that blue line in there, and then we wet it and let the paint bleed out from the area of high concentration to low concentration. And we have this really interesting horizon line across there. Also, our foreground turned out pretty good here. This grass in that green section and the way this little bit of white stayed here, all nice. And these little white spots across here, those all worked out pretty well, this too. And this grass across here. We have some effects of the salt. See how this green bled down into this Payne's gray across there? Yeah, that's all pretty interesting. And this mid-ground here is pretty interesting. But let's talk about the elephant in the painting, which is this big ugly area here. So there was way too much water here and the paint just bled out. So, you know, you would say, all right, this painting was just an experiment. It kind of turned out, you know, 90% of it turned out. We put our mat on here. You see our mat still includes that, right? So here's what I do with paintings like this. I get a ruler, all right, and I get an X-Acto knife and I cut it. And this little piece over here that's no good, we chuck it. It's just gone. Now, this kind of odd size kind of painting, you usually wouldn't be able to frame or anything. But what you would be able to do with it is you'd be able to put it into a card. Glue it onto a card for a birthday present or, you know, a gift card to a friend or family member, and they'll love it. You know, sign your name to it. They'll think they're getting an original painting and they'll absolutely love it. So my best advice is there's none of this that's garbage. There's some of it that's, you know, you have to use the back of it as experimentation, but none of it is really garbage. I want you to always think that everything that we're going to do here, especially, you know, those people who follow me all the time, everything is an experiment. Just make it that every last thing that you are trying to create is just an experiment. The stuff that doesn't turn out, you cut off the bad part, you keep the good part, you glue it onto a card and you give it to a friend or family member and they'll love it. They'll think it's awesome. I guarantee you. All right, thanks a lot for watching today. As always, if you're currently a subscriber, thanks a lot. And if you're not currently a subscriber, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks a lot for watching today, and we'll see you again next time.